Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. The latest '07 show gave us quite a few interesting numbers on the citadels. For instance, 40% have been deployed in HiSec, a 90% survival rate for the Astraus. Honestly, that was about what I would have gambled after the dust had settled. Right at the beginning, every Astraus that was going up, that was in a slightly visible spot, was just tracked until the vulnerability timer came out, and then if it was seen within the first 15 minutes, they would have war decks, and in nullsec, lowsec, and wormhole space, of course, they were instantly tracked and attacked. But overall, it's a little bit as I expected. As people made more and more Astraus citadels, those become so common that people just don't go after them anymore. So I think that the next in line of fire is of course the very first Excel citadel that has been deployed in wormhole space, and Fortizars. Honestly, Fortizars that are not defended well enough, I still feel like they may be at risk of being attacked because of the different vulnerability window that provides much more opportunity. But that dust is slowly settling. Citadels are surviving. They are decently safe. Safe places to do business and to store items, honestly, especially in wormhole space. They will be very popular there. So I look forward to what comes next, of course. Am I still going for a large citadel? Maybe it depends a little bit on my income and on how much time I have, where I want to put it. Obviously, I'm not going to compete with the UI Federation L Citadel there for the market. So I may try to put it somewhere else. I may just skip that phase and go straight to the new structures when those come out after the summer. But that was pretty damn interesting to see that as they become more popular, it becomes basically impossible to track every citadel that's out there, and so they become just like bosses, something that people generally ignore unless they have good intel or they absolutely want to go after a war. But then they have easy pickings, they have plenty of options to go after a few citadels. So let's move on to the market here, of course. That's why we're here. 2:30, we'll start off with plex right away. Let's take a look at these. These are 909 million. So when I was checking it, it was like 909.4. So I said, okay, I'll say it's 908, but they pretty much didn't move from last week, so bottom may be forming here. 874 million for the buyers. That's a gap of, let me see here, that's 27, that's almost 37 million. That's a decent gap, but considering the new taxes, it may just be the right one. If we look at the chart here, you can clearly see that a bottom is trying to be formed. Of course, we've seen that before here as well at like this was probably 920 million, here a bottom at 850 million. So the chart has yet to catch up to the fact that we're back to 910 million, which is above this line. So that's a good indication that this could be a bit more serious of a pullback. I must also say that I put my money where my mouth is, because I bought a plex, but it was a sell order of 890 million. So I thought that was a really good opportunity, just a straight sell order below 900 million. I said, sure, I'm gonna buy one to diminish my average cost of plexes that I'm holding, and I think 900 million could be close to a good place to buy, honestly. But we'll have to see in the next few weeks if, let's say, a summer sale comes out or something like that. We could of course have competition for these, and then we could go back down, or more supply for these, I mean, and then we could go back down. That it is still a possibility. Also, something to keep in mind is that the summer is generally a time where activity does decrease in EVE Online. That also means that demand for plexes, especially for the people that only plex accounts, tends to decrease a little bit as well. Some people let a few accounts go and things like that, and all of that does mean that there could be more pressure on the plex price throughout the summer. Now for me, I think that's actually a great opportunity. If I don't build an L Citadel, then I'll probably have extra funds that I'll constantly be putting into plexes as I earn them, being ready for a winter jump back, which is what I'm expecting. That is of course pure speculation. I could be entirely wrong on that, but that's my current reading of the market and my current plan when it comes to the Plex investment that I've already made and how I'm seeing the activities throughout the summer. So if this is a true bottom, of course, then you can already start waiting for parity on your investment and try to find the right time to sell. If, however, we keep going down, I'm seeing that as an opportunity to earn some ISK, get some cheap Plex, and be ready later down the line. The multiple pilot trading certificate also indicating that it is jumping off of probably the 860 million mark, heading above 900 million again. The sellers are at 925, the buyers are at 831, much bigger margin on this one though. So if you want to do a multiple pilot trading certificate, just put up a buy order for 840 million and you're probably still going to pick that one up. So that's pretty interesting. But very similar pattern, of course, and also heading above 900 million again. Pilot body resculpt next, still a little bit under pressure since early April, but honestly still holding on at 220 million. That is not that bad. I think a quarter of a Plex just to resculpt, that I personally find that pretty expensive, because I don't tend to spend a lot on vanity items and things like that. It's also a very small market, of course. Volumes are very low, around 10 on a good day, less than that on a bad day. So it's not easy, I think, to make trade money in this one. But it's interesting to see that it's down a little bit. Here it went up very sharply with the skill extractor, skill injector deployment into EVE Online. So I think a lot of people created complete alts that they liked, not just skill wise but also look wise, and that's why we saw the increase in price here. But now we're basically back to the price point of 220 before the extractors. So from this perspective, the extractor injector craze has basically been absorbed by the economy, and we're now starting to get a picture of what their impact will be, I think, from now on. So here are the skill extractors, still going down in price, but also probably bottoming out just below 210 million. So we've got 207.5 for the sellers, but we still see 347, oh my god, coming in as the latest sell order. Just look at these orders, that's pretty crazy as well, in the last 24 hours. So it's just a lot of supply, I think, is just adding to the pressure of the price. You get a double impact because of the lower Plex prices as well, of course. And the buyers are at 199, so they're still willing to pay 200 million. Also, that's a pretty small margin right here. So yeah, heading towards 200 million for skill extractors. That's quite surprising, but you also see the first signs here that we may be slowly edging towards the bottom on skill extractors. Skill injectors could be more interesting, but it's not what I expected. I expected maybe skill injectors would also start to flatten out a little bit, at least in the last few days, with Plex jumping back up for 30-40 million, something like that. But that's just not happening, right? So we started at 650 as the very top. Currently they are selling for 586 million and the buyers are at 553 million. So we're still heading down quite drastically with the skill injectors. Keep one thing in mind, again, that I do think that as Plexes have decreased in price so drastically, for a lot of players it makes a lot more sense to pay 900 million for a Plex than to pay 580 million, almost 600 million for one skill injector. So there is of course some ease of use. We can also see that supply is probably lowering in volume a little bit, but not in the number of sell orders, because all of this is still in the last 24 hours. So I do think that maybe SP farms are starting to kick in as well, right? People that have characters that they Plex and use the multiple pilot training certificate on for the express purpose of farming their skill points, putting those in injectors and bringing those to the market. So the ease of use here, of course, is that you have instant skill points. That is something that a lot of people will probably like, especially newer players. But I do feel that this is competing very heavily with Plex. And as Plex have gone down so drastically, I would personally take 30 days game time over a skill injector. or even over 2 skill injectors, which is almost parity. I mean, it still has to go down a little bit to become parity, but I would personally go for plexes over skill injectors, just because I tend to see EVE as a long-term game that I play, and so I would rather have a few more months of game time than extra skill points, which at the moment, of course, that's true as well. For my main especially, I have very little use of that. Keep one thing in mind as well, maybe a side note on the skill injectors. I think it's next week that CCP is planning to introduce the first daily opportunity, which allows you to earn extra skill points on a single character. It's probably a little bit of a counter to the SP farms as well, because active players now have a way to add a little bit of skill points, and the way these characters are used, it was expected, but maybe it may have been to a degree that CCP was not expecting, so that there's a huge amount of skill farms out there, characters that are basically never undocking anymore, but still making money. So they've created a bit of a passive income that way, and they maybe want to counter that with daily opportunities to basically give players a reason to undock, to be active within the sandbox. So that one is still going down, and could be going down even further with the daily opportunities coming out, giving out even more skill points. So that's it for the Plex related market. Let's move on to some minerals at 1110. 1110, there we go. Not good news for titanium. After heading back towards 6.4 ISK, then going back down towards 6.2, which I thought was an okay price. We're actually going down substantially, breaking 6.10, which we've not done. We tried previously, but we didn't do that in the last 6 months, so we're now at a 6-month low on high volumes. That is definitely not good news. So around 20 billion units have been sold here, and yet we are here at a 6-month low. So that's a little bit unexpected. I thought we were in for a more stable period, but the buyers are at 584 and the sellers had to go as low as 607. So just around 6 ISK, now hovering probably just above that for the sell orders. I think that this also indicates that it's a lot of buy orders that have been filled to get this result, right? To head towards 6 ISK, you have data points just above that. So buy orders that were a little bit higher than this were probably just basically sold out, as well as people dumped more and more titanium. Are we in an oversupply situation? Honestly, for the new buy orders, you still have orders that are like 2 billion, 1.5 billion. You don't see that in the sell orders, so I would say that this should start stopping, but it also came completely out of left field. I didn't see this coming at all, so I may be wrong on that. Let's see, maybe the other minerals gives better indication. Here we have pyrite, very similar story, crawling out of its 6-month low position just a few weeks ago, back to 11 ISK, and now declining quite drastically towards 10.2 ISK. So Jesus Christ, 10.05 for the sellers, 10.1 for the buyers. So completely closed that gap. The sellers have been forced to come in with lower and lower prices if they still want to sell their pyrite. This is quite interesting. We see I think a new mechanic that is popping up here in the market. That is that when buyers, for instance, here have been winning out, they've been dictating the price, you can see that gap close in quite drastically between the buyers and the sellers. And so that means that despite a decent supply, I mean a full front page of new sell orders here, including 500 million, this is probably around the magnitude of 700 million, 800 million units of pyrite. Yeah, it's a lot more than the buy orders in this case. So they're just, people are not buying this pyrite straight off the market anymore when they need it. No, they're putting up a buy order because of the bigger margin there, and those have had to be filled by sellers, thus creating the really serious decline in price. Now, if we ever come in a completely different situation, what I expect to see happen is that maybe the buyers don't move that much, but that we see that the sellers find the opportunity to increase their price again. And so the changes in margin become a very clear indication of what's actually happening in supply demand situation. Here the gap has been closed almost completely. I mean 10.5, 10.1 for buyers. When it comes to the taxes, there must be someone taking a loss here. but that happened on a really big decrease in price. Again, we're reaching a 6-month low at around 10 ISK here for pyrite, quite substantial, and so this happened here. It's probably a pattern that we'll see more and more because of the new taxes. Next up here we've got Mexalon. A bit of an opposite situation here, increase in price, we saw an increase in volume as well, but topping out at 74 ISK. Let's see what the sellers and the buyers are doing. So the sellers have gone down from around 74 ISK towards 72 now, 71.8 ISK here for the sellers. Supply not that much in the last 24 hours, but still 50 million, 60 million units. The buyers though are at 67.6 ISK, so that margin is quite a bit bigger. We're talking, let's say 72 to 68, to not exaggerate it too much. That's 4 ISK. That's more than 5%, which, well, from 10.4 to 10.8 was almost nothing percentage wise. And so here, for instance, we see that probably the high demand of Mexalon has increased the price and kept a healthy margin, because sellers are still sort of dictating the price. Now, if you take the very top of 74 ISK though, then that margin becomes even more, definitely around 10%. As you can see here, that at the very tail end we've been decreasing in price towards 72, 70 ISK here. That means that some buyers are getting their orders filled as well, and thus the gap is closing again. So the buy orders aren't moving that much, but here, for instance, in the last few weeks here, the sellers have definitely won out, and so they could dictate a bigger margin compared to the buyers, trying to get the taxes basically paid by the people that buy straight off the market. Interesting, very interesting change here. Isogen then 95 ISK for the sellers, 91 for the buyers, so less than 3 ISK margin, so that's not that much, around 30%, but that could be okay, and it is indeed still sort of okay. So we fell back a little bit, so we closed in on the margin, but we didn't completely close it, so we didn't come off a cliff. We're still holding at 95 ISK on the chart, which is all right. We're not heading for a 6-month low on Isogen right now. If you see this gap close completely, so sellers have to keep adding new sellers closing in on the 92 ISK margin, then yeah, of course we're gonna be declining quite seriously here on the chart. But for now, it looks like we're actually managing to hold on an average price, and so maybe we'll see the margin increase a little bit around the current values, and then end up with hovering around 95 ISK. So that would be the pattern to expect if we see Isogen basically be more stable. Next up here we've got Noxium. After the really big decline here with the Citadel expansion to below 440 ISK, we jumped back a little bit, but we're already back down to 460, which is, well, still a very, very low price for Noxium. So here again, we would expect that the margin has increased here. Are the buyers still at 430? Yeah, 440 for the buyers, 466 for the sellers. Supply here, so full front page, 6 million, 2 million, 1 million. Buyers, 1 million here, 1.6 million here, 6 million here, but that's quite a bit lower at 435. So the pressure is still on for Noxium. That is clearly visible, with still a lot of new supply coming in. That's a lot bigger than the demand. So here we can see that we decreased in price a little bit, probably margins closing in. Big volume spike for this increase in price, but it's just not happening for Noxium. It's extremely low where it's at the moment. Historically, we're still at a pretty low point for 6 months. I mean, of course, this one now is an exception, that became a 6-month low where investors said, okay, I would be crazy not to stock up on some Noxium here. That's the increased volume spike, does bring the price back in line with 460, 470, but these prices are considered normal for Noxium, maybe even high for Noxium, and historically that's definitely not what Noxium costs. So the mineral changes have basically gutted the Noxium market value. Then finally we'll have some nullsec stories. Here is Zydrine holding on at 1250 on the chart, so sellers are at 1238, buyers are at 1166. Pretty healthy margin, which I think indicates that the sellers are mostly dictating the price on this one, right on the money for the chart here as well. So that's what's happening here. If you see this gap closing, of course, then we're going to go back down in price. If you see the margin increase, then I think we'll be going up in price. So this is definitely a pattern, at least in minerals so far, that seems like it's gonna work out, right? The buyers, they may not move that much because they have to compete with investors that probably think more long term. What is historically a good price for this mineral? Is it going to be worth it to invest in that? So putting a pretty hard spot for the buy orders for minerals for even longer terms, but the sell orders may be the ones that start to move as they can or cannot dictate the price on high demand or on too high supply. Pretty interesting stuff. Here's Megasite, for instance, clearly another big winner here, breaking out from 10,050 ISK, 1,050 ISK to almost 1,500 ISK and still heading up. So we should see a pretty healthy margin here, which we don't. That's sort of strange, but then what should you keep in mind? That the buy orders have had to go up to 1,400 ISK from a bottom of 1,050 ISK. That's probably pretty important. So the sellers are at 1,476, the buyers are at 1,400, but the buyers may be dictating a new floor for Megasite. If that happens, that could be a pretty damn interesting data point here, and definitely something to track. So because my theory, as I've said, is that a lot of these buy orders are also investors. For instance, here 2.5 million units at 1.4 thousand ISK. That's definitely a little bit of money that you're pouring into the Megasite market. Thus, the buyers may be dictating a bit of more of an absolute floor, and having to go up to 1,400 means that Megasite may not go down that much if it does stop increasing in price. So pretty interesting on that one. And then of course we'll end up with Morphite that is still climbing, heading towards 20,000 ISK, doubling of the price in not that much time. And yeah, this was a great buy opportunity that happened right before the Citadel expansion. Unfortunately, I was putting all my ISK and effort into the Citadels themselves, the blueprints and stuff like that. But this is definitely one that I spotted. It's also one that Market Prosper, that Yves Prosper noticed as well. He even said that he was making his moves on this one, and so he's made a lot of ISK because the price already doubled for Morphite. And interestingly enough as well, here the buyers had to follow suit up to 18,000 ISK, and the sellers are now heading towards 20,000, even 21,000 ISK here. So Morphite, obviously a big winner of the Citadel expansion here, doubling in price, doubling in value, whereas plexes, for instance, have lost quite a little bit of ground. These, of course, make up for that if you had invested in this one right before the expansion. Interesting situation, because this is a complete breakout of Morphite right here. So that's it for minerals. Moving on to some Tech 1 ships. 2245 sounds good. Let's take a quick look at these. Of course, the big problem here is that battleships are not very popular, so the Armageddon is a bit all over the place, definitely decreasing in price in the last few months, and pretty violently so in the last few weeks since the Citadel expansion. So for instance, here we go from 205 million to 190 million. It's still less than 10%, so it's not like you're making a lot of trade money on this, but now back up to 200 million, slowly going down though, if you see what the tops are doing. So as availability of this ship is pretty decent, 41 being brought to the market here. I'm guessing that what is going to dictate a lot of this chart is, again, are the sellers dictating the price or are the buyers dictating the price? So 182 million is around here on the chart. So have a few buy orders filled, you're definitely decreasing the daily average quite a little bit. Are the sellers dictating the price, then will be going up, as we've seen right here. So what I'm seeing here is that in the last few weeks, a lot of people have bought Armageddons straight off the market for 203 million ISK without too much trouble, and not that many new buy orders have been filled. So I'm guessing that there is decent demand, because you can see a lot of new buy orders that have been placed in the last 24 hours, not that many new sellers, and thus you get an increase in price. It all does become a bit more visible with the new taxes, it seems. Next up here, we've got the Caracal, obviously going up in price again. Could be the war heating up because the data point's up to 14.5 million. It's an exception on this one though. So the sellers are at 12 million, the buyers are at 11 million. They've gone up a little bit, I think. Although not that many people have placed a sell order, a buy order, excuse me. They seem to have gone up to 11 million because on average 11 million as an absolute floor here seems to be quite okay. So yeah, 12 million to 11 million, 10% margin between the sellers and the buyers, which is still pretty high. Increased prices, so I'm guessing that there's just a lot of demand for Caracals, but that people are not wasting their time with placing buy orders. They're just straight up buying them from the market here. So despite the fact that we still see around 100 Caracals being brought in the last 24 hours, we have increased prices. So they're very popular. I think this could be related to the Nausicaa wars, right? Some entities preparing a few Caracal fleets could have this impact. Next up here, we've got Dominic's stabilizing at 195. Personally, I think that's good news because I like to see a more stable market, but it's also an indication that it's a battleship here. So 199, 200 million for the sellers, 187 for the buyers, very similar to the Armageddon, but volumes at around 75 and 195. So I would say that this indicates that actually the Dominic's is decently well balanced. You have new sell orders, but you also have new buy orders. Sometimes it's a sell order that wins out, sometimes it's a buy order that wins out, and so on average we're between the two here and pretty stable. Interesting, yeah. Dominic's looking good supply demand wise. Next up here we got the Drake that broke out to 57 million but seems to be going back down. So again, if you look at this, maybe 52 million as a bit of a floor. Where are the buyers at? 53.7. So they've had to increase maybe just a little bit. Sellers can ask 59 million almost for a Drake. Thus we get a serious increase in price, which is followed by an increase in price for the buyers as well here, up to 54 million. And the question is, will the Drake start to hover in between these 2 points now, or will at some point supply be so overwhelming that they'll just decide, okay, I'm just gonna start selling straight to these sell orders here, still get my 54 million, be happy about that, thus decreasing the floor again towards the 52 million that we can expect to be an absolute floor. It is possible if you look at the number of buy orders above that. It's not that many, maybe 15 Drakes to be filled just to bring that floor back down to 52 million. So that's quite interesting. If of course you start to see big volumes on these buyers because they're not picking that many up at these lower prices, then of course, yeah, that could mean that the Drake is going to stay higher for the foreseeable future. But with these low volumes on the buyer sides, I don't expect that. Next up here we get the Mauler, again pretty stable at 11.5 million. The sellers are at 12.2, the buyers are at 10.9. So above and below that, that means that it's doing okay supply demand wise here. Next up we've got the Myrmidon, again after a big increase in price going back down substantially. But the big question is going to be, where are the buyers at? They're at 53 million, which is around here on the chart as a bottom. So basically if people did increase the floor for the buyers by putting up buyers at like 53, 54, 55 million, those have basically been filled as we decrease in price again. But the sellers are still trying close to 60 million is at the moment for a Myrmidon, which I think is not that bad. But the supply is pretty high, of course, on that opportunity. 50 of them coming in here. Obviously people are going to have to jump below that one if they want to sell them. Next up here we've got the Oracles. That's actually an okay chart, honestly, for a tier 3 battlecruiser. We've seen a lot more volatility, holding on at around the 80 million mark, slightly up in price. So 84 million for the sellers, 73 million and a half, 73.5 million for the buyers, and an average of 80 million. Yeah, heading a little bit towards the sellers. So maybe there's a bit more demand than supply in the last week or so, but none of this looks drastic, completely out of place. So this looks like the Oracle may be in a good spot to be stable. Next up here we get the Raven, another battleship, pretty jittery on low volumes. So bottom of 175, a top again at 195, that's more than 10%. If you could buy here and sell here, that's probably a little bit of money made, but again, on these low volumes, very tricky to actually do. So we went up in price and are now slowly going down. Again, the interesting thing I think is going to be the bottom. 183.5 for the buyers. Are there a lot of them? Well, here we have another 6 of them, so this is starting to be decent in volumes. Then 181, 180, 178. So yeah, the volumes just aren't there, which means that the Raven has room to be all over the place, right? It's difficult to dictate the bottom. It's difficult to try and sell them as well, and so this is why I think you get such a strange chart that seems to be very violent. It keeps hovering around 185 to 190 though. So the sellers are at 195, the buyers are at 183. Pretty wide margin here of almost 10%. Yeah, it's strange. The battleships not being popular, it's very difficult to actually make some money in this market, I think. Next up here we get the Stabber, slightly going up in price but staying at 11 million after breaking the mold here. So where are the buyers at? 10 million, the sellers 11.2 million. There's not that much supply, so there's bound to be a bit more demand than supply, meaning increased prices. So we're slowly creating an opportunity for more Stabbers to be brought on the market. Maybe if all of these, well, actually that's still quite a lot of them. So no, I think the Stabber is actually going to start to flatten out here, because there's no reason to wait for all of this supply to dry out. So you're probably going to see 11.2 million as sell orders come in. The buyers will stay at 10.1 or something like that, and thus you'll probably get an average chart that looks like this at 11 million. In between the two, always slowly or closer to the sellers, of course. I think people do mostly buy straight off the market when they want a ship. So that's interesting. Next up we've got the Tornado, after reaching a 6-month low at 68 million, now back towards a 6-month high. Not exactly, but definitely a high point here at 82 million. So are we seeing a big margin here? 75 million for the buyers, 83 million for the sellers. That's an 8 million margin, more than 10% on the buy orders, almost 10% on the sell orders. That is quite significant. 75 million as well is definitely up a little bit. Now let's see if the volumes are there for these buy orders. 75, that's just 3 buy orders. Then with 74, that's a lot more. So I think 74 as a new floor here is definitely possible, but we're probably going to go down if we see big supply. We see pretty big supply, full front page here, 14, 12. That's probably 50, 60 Tornadoes, a daily average volume. So there is going to be a little bit of pressure, I think, from this, but not too much. And I think that a new floor at 74 for Tornadoes is definitely a possibility. Next up we've got the Typhoon, unfortunately another battleship. At least it's stable, but it's stable at 170 million. That's definitely not a lot for a battleship. So 174 for the sellers, 161 for the buyers. Yeah, the floor for Typhoons unfortunately looks to be close to 160 million, which is definitely pretty low. Slowly going up, but of course at such low prices, I think to make any money on that you have to try and sell it on a sell order, and that becomes pretty tricky to do when there is no demand. So next up, finally, we have the Vexor here. Supply drying up a little bit, 13.3 million, 13.5 million for the sellers. Demand pretty damn high, 11.9. So are we increasing in price? Yes, we are. There you go. It does become a bit more easy to spot trends in some of these. And yeah, the Vexor heading towards 30 million. That is probably going to be the one that you want to produce and bring to the market in the next few days here, because this is bound to be a decent opportunity. Daily volumes, more than 200, increasing volumes here as well. So maybe a few Vexor fleets or something like that may have been made. Or newbies, you know, Vexor is a really good ship for newbies that start to get into cruisers. So that is a possibility as well. Or people have maybe been producing other stuff, Thus, the supply dried up a little bit, and now we have an increase in price. I expect this to be filled by next week, so I think that then the sellers will be forced to go back down, but the buyers staying at 12 million, 11.9. That's actually up a little bit. Are there many orders at that point? Well, it's still decent in volume here, so a lot has to happen to bring the Vexor back down below 12 million. So this could be a bit more structural than what it might look here. 12 to 13 million for the Vexors. Yeah, interesting new way to look at all of this. Next up, we've got the Tech 2 markets, 34.30. Yeah, it's gonna be a long one from the looks of it. Let's see if we can spot some trade opportunities. And honestly, I think because of the taxes on all the steps needed to make Tech 2 ships, it's gonna be more and more tricky. Here the Basilisk, for instance, very stable at 210 million. Look at the rest of the charts, top at 250, top at 220 here, bottom at 180. That's definitely not something I think you wanna dive into. Next up, we've got the Cerberus market window hanging a little bit. Let's try the claw, fetching orders. That's not good. It happened as well when I first started the client. So let's maybe quickly go for the browse. Yeah, it's definitely lagging quite seriously, the market here at the moment. So let's hope that I can actually finish this one. No type selected. Claw, market data, fetching orders. God damn it. So this actually is not very good. Let's see if I can. Usually, if it is a socket closing, then typing something in your corp chat is gonna fix that. But no, I'm still getting information here. So it's definitely not a socket that closed. It is the market tab. Seems to be back now. All right, here we go. Yeah, it is. All right. Sorry for the delay. Nothing I can do. The market seems to be hammered quite heavily at the moment. So let's just stick to the charts on this one. Honestly, Cerberus slightly going down, but again, just look at where we come from and look at the top. I don't really like this. Look at the volumes as well, pretty damn low here at the moment. So if we continue to go down, the Cerberus may start to be interesting, but you're still paying 200 million here, 195, very small margin. That's definitely not where I want to put my money at the moment. Next up here, we got the claw again. These waves here are now from 18 to 22 million. Could be all right, but 20 million to 21 to 22 million for the buyers and the sellers. So we're again right in the middle. We're not at the bottom, we're not at the top. I don't like this. Next up here we get the Guardian. Went as low as 130. That seemed like a good buy opportunity, right? I said so as well, but just look at what happened, right? We go back up to 135 and now we're just hanging on here. The sellers are at 135 to 139 here. The buyers are at 125. So if you expect volatility to come back, then the Guardian may be a good idea to place some buy orders below 130. Honestly, I think that that's not a bad purchase, but when will volatility come back? That's very difficult to say. So the Guardian, yes, maybe, because the buy orders are at 125. That could be interesting. The first one to show a sign that previous bottoms may still be in play. Next up, we've got the Hound here, going up in price, but going up in price from 19 million up to 22 now. So here we go, 22 million for the sellers, 18.6 for the buyers. So it's just a margin increase here. I think it's going to be tricky to make a lot of money on this one, especially with 181 Hounds coming in here. That's just going to flatten the price very quickly again. No chance for a breakout like this from like 19 million to 28 million. Here again, really nice volatility, lots of money to be made here. Double jump here, not that good in my opinion. Next up, we've got the Ishtar. At least that's pretty damn good, right? You go as low as 195, which on the 6-month chart looks pretty good. Then you go up to 210 million, and now we're on our way back down. So on the Ishtar, you had a possible 1-month trade. That was a lot of money. Currently, sellers are at 206 million, buyers are at 188 million, which is like here on the chart. So of course you want to sell if you still have Ishtars, but you don't want to buy at this point. But at least we have a seller and we have a buyer in the Guardian. So there is some hope for Take-Two market, I think. But yeah, here is the Manticore again, going from 20, a little bit under 23 million up to 24, but this is just too stable. Volumes are lowering. I'm not seeing the buy opportunities yet. So this is a big no for these frigates at the moment. Here's the Nemesis again, slow increase in price from 18 to 22 million. It's not the volatility that you need to make some good trade cash, I think. And here already going back down as well. So sellers 21, buyers 20. That's not anything that you're really gonna make some money. You need buyers below 18 or something like that, and there's still quite a bit of extra supply or something that needs to be coming in to make that happen. Next up here we get the Oneros. Also looked like we had a buy opportunity to close to 140. The bad news is you can see this chart slowly climbing out of that. So the buyers are still decently interesting, 135.5. The sellers at 152. The danger is, of course, that we'll never have a full breakout up to like 170, 160, so that you can actually make some real money on the orders, because the buyers are going to be very hesitant to increase their buy order price, I think, with all the taxes involved. But we'll see whether that's true or not. Next up here, the Purifier. Okay, honestly, maybe being proven wrong right here. You could probably buy those for like 19 million. At this point, now we're up to 26 million. So sellers 26 million, buyers 21 million, 2 up from that bottom, more than 2 up, 2.5 up from that bottom. That's 10%, that's definitely more than 10%. The Purifier shows that a trade was still possible, was needed a big volume spike right here. So interesting. I think it's going to be a lot trickier to spot the buy opportunities. But here the Purifier showed that an opportunity has been created. You can sell these now, of course. Next up here we get the Raptor. That's too stable at 25 million. Where are the buyers at 22.6? Probably still a little bit too high. Consider that pretty close margin here, unless you expect the Raptor to take off from this point, maybe on big volumes. It is possible, but I still feel it's pretty risky. And finally we have the Scimitar. No, don't like it at all, hovering at 160 here, bottom 140. We saw as how low we could go before, so not really liking this. Buyers 145, sellers 165, not even that many of them here, so this is definitely not being supplied enough to call a buy opportunity. But yeah, the Take-Two market I think is going to be pretty tricky. The old data points basically that I used to try and find buy opportunities no longer work that well because of the new taxes. So we'll need to completely rethink our way of making trade money in the Take-Two market, I think. Next up we've got Take-3 at 42 minutes. Quick look at the destroyers, which were under heavy pressure in the last few weeks from supply. Look at the Confessor chart here, obviously a 6-month low, and despite that, or not despite that, no, in the last 24 hours, not that many, but you can still see, of course, the huge availability with 35, 151, 12, 32, 17. There's just a lot more supply than demand here, even if it's not on new sell orders. And so the Confessor, 46 million, pretty cheap if you see where we come from. Hecate chart, very similar, heading towards 45 million. And here we do still see supply coming in here with 63, 60, 57. These are just crazy numbers, and all of that is in the last 24 hours. So the pressure is definitely still on in the tactical destroyers. Here's the Jackdaw chart. Big volume increase, so someone took the opportunity to buy a lot of Jackdaws at around 42 million. Obviously that's not a bad idea if you want a Jackdaw fleet at the ready, then you do this, but just look at how quickly this is being squashed already, right? The price is already going back down towards 44 million, and so unfortunately we're hanging again. Damn it, CCP, that's not good. Can I still see the chart? Nope, now the entire client is hanging. I can still go here. Yeah, we're still seeing this being updated, so it's definitely a market issue that's only adding to the time of this EVE talk. Maybe a quick refresh of the market window can help, but I don't think so. So obviously it's still lagging because we're still in the price chart rather than the market data. We were at the Jackdaw, still trying to fetch the orders. Honestly, I think that means that I'll just struggle myself to the Tech 3 ships, and then we're gonna call it for this Eve talk, because this is very difficult to work with the current market problems. But here we go, the Jackdaw pops up here at still 30 coming in, so not that many new sellers in the last 24 hours in volumes, but of course at extremely low prices as well. And you can see that any increase in volume here does increase the price, but that doesn't last long enough because of the oversupply. Next up here we've got this Vapel finally. A little hesitation, but doing all right. Here you can see this Vapel try to go back to 50 million, but nope, it's just not happening. We're already back down to 44 million. That means 43.8 million for the sellers, 41.5 million for the buyers. And despite that, full front page of news Vapels, 33, 37, 37, 43. I mean, these are just crazy volumes for the prices. Cheap tactical destroyers is the name of the game at the moment. Oversupplying the Tech 3 market seems to be happening. Is also happening in the cruiser market here. The Legion slowly going back from a bottom at 130 though. 130, that's not a lot for a Legion. So 144 for the sellers, 136 for the buyers. Not that many, maybe half a front page of new Legions coming in. So interesting, they're hesitating a little bit on these. Next up here we get the Loki. Almost a full front page at 153, so up in price a little bit. Okay, the cruisers, not really seeing a big increase in volume, but seeing a slight increase in price. So people are still betting on the destroyers, and this gives the cruisers a little bit of room to increase in price. Here again, Proteus going up to 160, but already going back down. So I'm suspecting big supply for Protea. And all of this is less than 24 hours old, still less than 24 hours old, still less than 24 hours old. Yeah, there you go. So more than 2, probably almost 3 pages of new Protea coming in here, squashing the price from 160 down to 147 million. So you can see that the oversupply is not completely general. Here and there, some people do spot opportunities of higher prices, but the flood that comes to those Tech 3 ships is just so massive that these get squashed quite quickly. And then finally we've got the Tengu, which, oh my god, is trying to crawl out of the hole at around 145 here, but is just not able to do so. New supply, still a full front page, including several at 12, 13, 18 and 13 here, still at the last 24 hours here. So people basically just did not make any Legions, but moved to Tengus and Protea, and these are now oversupplied and under pressure quite severely. So that's not, still not good, right? Tech 3 market way oversupplied, and one Nullsec entity or a few Nullsec entities must have made a move on the Jackdaw, increasing the price a little bit, but to no avail, right? People just see that opportunity and then bring so many Tech 3 ships that they squash the price again. Cheap Tech 3s is the name of the game here. And alright, I'll still add fuels. I was planning to do so, and these are only 4 of them anyways. So let's try it. 4730 for fuels as the extra one. Helium fuel blocks. What I was mostly interested in is like a 6-month trend on this one. So we started at 18,000, we're now at 18,500. Honestly, with a bit of a volume spike here, but we're already settled, and this is probably quite okay, right? Consider maybe a bit extra demand due to citadels, but nothing drastic over 6 months. So good news on this one. Hydrogen fuel blocks, very similar here. Starts at 18.5, ends at 19k. So a little bit of an increase in price, maybe a bit of an increase in consumption with Citadel that will start to show up here. But this is basically a big speculative bubble that we are seeing here. Nitrogen fuel blocks, that's a bit more structural, from 19,000 to 21,000 ISK. So that's obviously a little bit more of an increase in price, but that you can see also that there's a bit more pressure on this one as well, trying to go back down. So it could be interesting to see if nitrogen fuel blocks are going to go back down a little bit. considering how cheap the other fuels are, right? As if you have Citadels, you can just buy whichever you want, so you buy the cheapest one. But again, here that speculative bubble showing up a little bit, just not as much in the nitrogen fuel blocks. And here finally we have the oxygen fuel blocks, starting at 18,000, ending at 18,500, on some speculation up to 20.5. So this one remained a bit more stable. Big volume increase here. Is it similar for helium? Not as visible. So yeah, all of this on speculation, probably that the price would increase quite substantially because of the change in the needed materials, but all of that has been digested, and the fuel market looks actually pretty stable. I think it's going to become even more stable as more Citadels take over, and those can use any fuel block. So we'll see more parity across the 4 types of fuel blocks, and that is, I think, a good news for Citadel owners, POS owners, industrialists, that we don't have to go to crazy fuel costs when it comes to producing stuff, having Citadels running and things like that. So over the course of 6 months, maybe a little bit of an increase in price here. Over the last 6 months, probably a bit of an increase in activity in general as well. So maybe a few more POSes, Citadels starting to increase demand a little bit. But if you look at this from a general game health perspective, that's pretty damn good, right? Increased fuel demand, increased fuel price probably means increased activity as well. So nothing too drastic, too speculative, decently stable, but up a little bit, which I see as good news because of increased activity in the game. And there you go, guys. Difficult EVE talk this week, but we got there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.